Hangout is live and on the air. I believe you. I really do. Welcome to the Silver Happy Hour radio broadcast. I am your host. I am here with Chaz. Say hello, Chaz.
Hello, Chaz.
You are coming to you live from RadioValencia.fm 87.9 on your radio dial in the San Francisco Bay Area. Robinson will be joining us. He will be joining us. He has already confirmed. We spoke to him just a moment ago from Da Nang, Vietnam, and he will be taking some sort of buggy to Saigon, and he was with a girl. I assume she was Miss Saigon. I could be wrong. But this is the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast where we talk about drugs and booze and recovery and all kinds of other shit. It looks like right now we may not be on Radio Valencia. So we're going to keep rolling with the YouTube because that's, you know, kind of our main source of listenership.
Really?
And, well, no, but the YouTube is the live stream. It keeps us connected. And if we aren't on Radio Valencia, then that's a shame. Because right now, it's playing that goddamn rerun show again. So I'm wondering why this happens every once in a while. It's kind of strange.
Like if you're even a few seconds off, does it automatically go to like the
play,
the backup thing?
Yes, but it should allow me to break in. So we'll try it again. And it still thinks, So that's strange. And there should only be a short delay. But apparently it doesn't want to do anything. So why don't we do this? We will we're going to stop this broadcast, which means that I'll have to squish things together, and the people on YouTube will just have to listen to me introduce the show again. Does that sound okay with you, Chaz?
That's okay.
All right. So I say fuck it.
Is that okay, Cleo?
Broadcast stopped.
Cat.
I'm going to stop this. I am going to plug this in. Uh-oh, your command didn't reach Sam. That's what it says. That's what it says right here. It says my command did not reach Sam. I don't know who Sam is, but apparently Sam,
it didn't reach it.
I will not be done, Sam. So let's go back to the Dropbox. We're going to turn the volume up here. We're going to start the broadcast. All right, so we've started there. Start Sam.
No.
We'll start the music. No way for me to check two things at once, though. Welcome to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. You see how there was a question mark on the end?
Yeah.
I hope. I really do. I hope that we're on Radio Valencia. We've been on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Hello, YouTube listeners and viewers. But apparently Radio Valencia didn't want to play nice with the thing, so we restarted the bumper music. We're going back in time. And I'm wondering if it's because my computer clock is off by a minute or two, and if that messed us up. So This is the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. Still, it still is for those that were listening before. And we are hopefully coming to you live from Radio Valencia. And now that the bumper music's over, we're going to double check this and see if indeed this is the case. So let's see what it does. Nope, I still hear Robinson, and it says, "Uh-oh, your command didn't reach Sam." So right now,
Okay.
Chaz, we are officially not on Radio Valencia. And it kind of makes me sad.
All right,
If
Sam,
you
if you
cannot
hear
connect
us,
to the Shoutcast server because someone else is connected, use this to make a new connection. Hey, there's like a whole new segment down here. Interesting. I wonder if I could like try this and see what happens.
well, I guess this kind of makes up for the relatively smooth show we had last week.
You're right. It is absolutely our fault because everything went so smoothly last time. All right, so we're gonna have to remember. We're gonna have to remember that because I start this and then I start this and then it goes boom. I'm gonna have to edit all three of these segments together, and hopefully that worked. But there's no way for me to know until I stick this up to my face. We're talking, so Radio Valencia right now is talking about Rat Park.
It's a while ago.
But that was our last rerun show that we run on Radio Valencia. Huh. I wish I had an answer, but I am not the one in control of this.
Would that be Sam?
Yeah. I don't even know who the fuck Sam is. But apparently Sam is not my friend. At least not today. I hear you talking, Chaz.
Yeah.
Everybody. Oh, you know what? Did I hit I might have hit the wrong one here. This is supposed to be 3. And then try this. Stop. Start for the 4th time. On air. Remote broadcast 2. This is great radio. Well, we're not even on the radio, so it doesn't even matter, right?
Nope, not at all.
So it shouldn't really matter.
It's great YouTube though. Awesome.
You know what? Everybody enjoys watching bullshit on YouTube as far as I knew.
I'm gonna get my cats back on here.
Yeah, YouTube loves cats. That's for damn sure. Well, this sucks. Oh well. What can we do? I don't think we can do much of anything because Robinson's in Vietnam, so we don't even have our like Radio Valencia contact to go, hey, what the hell, guys? Why is this working? So why don't we'll start the show because we know that our listeners listen via podcast. That's the number one way that they listen to the show. So if we know that they listen to the podcast stream and that is the number one way that they listen, then we just need to give the people what they want. And what they want is a goddamn podcast. And if we can't get the Radio Valencia stream to work, well, then by golly, that's not really my fault. At least not this time. It probably has been my fault many times. If you... I'm still listening. I'm still trying to get it to work. What do you think, Chaz? Why do you think it's not working?
I think Sam's asleep at the wheel, man.
Really?
He is not doing his job. I don't know.
Well, who the hell is Sam? I need Sam's phone number.
It says whatever it is not reaching Sam. If
Well,
you're listening, Sam, pick it up.
Well, thanks, Sam. Oh, well. So why don't we start the show?
Again?
No. We'll just, I mean,
Just start,
do the
just
show.
start talking.
No,
All
we'll
right,
just
cool.
we'll just pretend that the drama is not unfolding in front of us, and that the internet has not lost its way. I will. Yep, right here. Uh-oh, your command didn't reach Sam. So I wonder if Sam, something in Sam has changed. Perhaps Sam is not the same Sam that Sam used to be. That would be
This is the
that would
first
be
time I've
sad.
ever even heard of Sam.
Yeah, Sam is sort of a behind the scenes guy. You know, he doesn't really like to he's not like a attention whore. I'm pretty sure Sam stands for something.
Yeah,
SA.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it was like sequential analytical machine, something like that.
Ooh, that's a good one. I was kind of thinking sucky analog microphone.
Probably.
Perhaps. I just got stuck in a drawer. So, which I guess is, it could be worse. I could have been stuck in the closet all these years. So, Mr. Chaz,
yes.
since we've now wasted 11 minutes trying to figure this out, how was your week?
My week was good, thank you. How about yours?
Well, what did you do?
I worked.
Okay. As did I.
I mean, I wish I could go into more stuff, but you know, it just sucks.
Work sucks?
I work. No. It just sucks that I can't like really go much into depth on everything.
Oh, like for confidentiality reasons.
Well, yeah. I mean, like people would know. Oh my God, he's talking about them.
I feel the same way from time to time because I work in a confidential environment for reasons very different from yours, but still equally confidential and equally fireable offenses for breaking confidentiality and non-disclosures. So that's why I don't really talk about that kind of stuff. But my week was good. It's been very busy, and I recently, just the beginning of the week, I don't know if I mentioned this on last week's show, but I woke up after having like 2 sequential days off, which I don't normally have 2 days off in a row. And I woke up the next morning to pretty significant pain in my foot, like on my heel. And I was like, wow, what the hell? Did I hit it hard? Did I like bruise? You know, they talk about bruising your bone. I don't even know if that's fucking possible. Like, I don't know if that's just one of those bullshit medical terms that like lay people use, and they're like, maybe you bruised your bone. It's like, can you bruise a bone? Because I'm pretty sure.
I have no idea.
Yeah, and so then I'm thinking like, then I get all dramatic, and I'm like, well, maybe I like fractured my heel. Like maybe I really injured myself, because it was to the point where I couldn't even like put weight on it. It hurt like hell, and it was the heel of my foot. And you don't, well, at least I don't. I never realized how much weight I put on the heel of my foot when I walk. So I took some Advil and tried to kind of stretch it out and rub on it a little bit, and it was still painful. And I just sort of hobbled my way through working that day. And a coworker of mine mentioned, oh, well, you know, it could be a tendon issue in your foot, and here, you know, try stretching it this way, try doing that or whatever. And then the next day it was a lot better, and I hadn't really done anything to fix it. And then the day after that, it hurt like hell again. So I come to find out that there is an ailment, a foot ailment that one can come down with, that the name of it is funny to me, and I was kept forgetting it kept like forgetting what the actual words were, and yet I knew that it had something to do with plantar, like foot, and then so I'm thinking, what is the word for this thing? I'm like, it had something to do with gardening. It was a gardening because of plantar, right? So this was me trying to remember it. So I'm like, it was a gardening, and it was like a fascist. It was like a fascist gardener. So it's like a Mussolini landscape problem with my foot going on. And
What the
because
hell?
the actual the medical term for this problem is plantar fasciitis. So in my mind, it was a fascist plantar. So a you know, a Nazi gardener. This is what I came up with in my head. So, and then my brain works in very mysterious ways. So all of a sudden I start getting like little cartoons in my mind of like, you know, Hitler pushing a lawnmower, you know, while saluting the SS salute. And I just start going off on all these weird places. But that was how I remembered the name of the thing. So when I was talking to not my family doctor, but my doctor family about it, trying to like figure out how I could make this pain go away, I ended up with this fancy thing.
Wow, what's
On my foot.
the
It's a
hell is
black
that?
strap. It's a black strap on. And it's got a hard piece in the middle, and it helps my foot feel better. So that's my story about my week, Chaz.
That's
You
amazing,
asked.
dude. Modern medicine
Yeah.
at its finest.
A black strap on makes everything better.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I found out that my father-in-law apparently suffers from the same thing, and anybody that knows Dr. Bob knows that when he tries to solve a problem, he goes full out trying to solve a problem. So tomorrow,
yes,
he's going to be dropping by with probably a trunk full of things to help my fascist Nazi foot, and I'm grateful. So yeah, that's my story. Robinson should be joining us from Saigon, Vietnam shortly. He was going to probably get on a scooter and scoot his way to Saigon. I was hoping to get another street tour.
That was awesome.
But it didn't happen. So we'll be patient and we'll wait for him to join. But I wanted to, at the very least, start our conversation.
Okay.
I didn't. There was not really any research to do regarding this topic. It's more experience driven. Yep. So I work with little trick-or-treaters, and a lot of them are in college, a lot of them are young, a lot of them are unfortunately much younger than me, and I was able to kind of poke and prod them a little bit today for some information about what college is like now versus 10 years ago, and it seems to have changed quite a bit, Chaz.
No.
Like, I know that our parents always said, wow, college has changed a lot since I was in college. And they were a lot less bad, I guess, would be the only way that I can describe it, back in the, maybe the 70s or the 80s. And I'm looking at just a 10-year span of time, and it has changed seemingly a lot since I was of college age. and visiting college campuses where my friends were in the dorms or whatever. And it's a little bit frightening. There's
How so?
Well, there is a lot of very poor decision making going on in the college campuses these days, more so than I remember. And I didn't hang out with like the goody two shoes crowd. And I had some pretty out there friends who were, you know, selling pot to their friends. And now it's kind of gone off the rails a little bit. And I don't know if it's because of the ever increasing access to drugs or the social acceptability of binge drinking or the MTV Spring Break I'm young and have an excuse to be a whore type mentality, but sex and drugs and drinking and bad decisions seem to be pretty commonplace these days in the world of university life. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's always been that way. Maybe it's always been as bad as it is now. And I just, when I was in it, because I was that age, it just didn't seem that bad. And maybe now that I'm a parent and I'm older and I have to consider my own child potentially going to college 7 or 8 years from now, maybe it just concerns me a little bit more than it used to. But you went to a 4-year university, Chaz, correct?
6, actually.
There's a 6-year university?
There is no longer any 4-year university. I don't know anyone who's made it out in just 4 years.
Got it.
Rarely. And the reason being is that all these prereqs and everything else you have to take. So the reason I graduated later was because the Walter Cronkite School and I had a falling out. So yeah, I went from journalism to sociology, and finally I was like, I have to get out of here. Please graduate me, and so I did.
The Walter
Cronkite
School of Journalism.
Yeah, they lost their accreditation, and I was like, I'm not going to wait around for you in order to graduate my ass out of here.
So, so you went to ASU.
Mm-hmm.
Did you live on campus or did you live off campus?
I lived on campus sophomore year. I lived in a dorm. It was actually the oldest dorm on campus. It was right in the middle of campus. So it was a lot of fun. I had a great time. In the summer, I was in that giant dorm down to the south of it, and I had a roommate who played guitar and loved Rush. And if you know my musical tastes, yeah, that was a summer from hell.
You never found a taste for Rush?
No. Well, the other roommate I had in the dorm on campus had a weird thing for Scooby-Doo. I'll just say that. Everything was Scooby-Doo. It was just Scooby-Doo, like toothpaste, shampoo, mac and cheese, board. I mean, just everything possible was Scooby-Doo, and it was just like,
that's a little weird.
All right. It's like the unicorn thing from
yeah.
I like unicorns.
All right. So good. Then I'm glad. For those that don't know, and nobody knows unless they've tapped our phones, I'm very glad you made it on the show tonight, then, Chaz, because you're going to be our perspective on all of this.
Oh, yay.
Because I did not live on campus when I was in college. I lived in an apartment. off campus.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't as surrounded by the college existence, and I went
Mm-hmm.
to a different kind of school. And so my classes were Monday through Friday,
Mm-hmm.
6-hour days every day of the week. And I know that most, 4-year university types are, you have a class in the morning, and then maybe you have a lab later, and then you have, a few hours off, and then one more class, and maybe you have two classes the next day, and then you have the next day the whole morning is off, and you have one class in the afternoon or something. But so you have, I think, a lot more downtime
Mm-hmm.
when you're at a 4-year university, and you live on campus. In my experience, I had experiences in dorms. I had friends that went to uh, the University of San Francisco and lived on campus in the dorms, so I spent a lot of time there. I had friends at UC Irvine that lived in the dorms there. I even had friends at UC Santa Barbara that lived in the dorms there, and all of which were a very similar environment, like very similar environment. And my sister, as a matter of fact, lived in the dorms at um, San Francisco State University. So I spent some time there as well. And they all were very similar. And there were a lot of very casual minded people. They walked around in their pajamas a lot. And there wasn't nearly as much studying going on as I expected to see. And since I myself did not attend a 4-year university like that where I lived in the dorms or anything, um, I can only assume that that's how they all kind of are. And since a lot of these people are in their late teens, early 20s, living on their own for the very first time, they don't have their parents breathing down their neck every day, setting a curfew and expecting them to be home at a certain time. A lot of people, like my sister, sort of flew off the rails a little bit when they found this new freedom. And because your classes aren't like going to a job where you have to wake up every morning and go to work, some mornings you have to wake up and go to class, some mornings you don't. And since a lot of times you can get away with missing a fair amount of class and still pass that class, there are times where maybe you decide, you know what, I'm just not going to go to class today because that sounds boring. So the reason that I bring all this up, and it may sound like a slightly strange topic to discuss on this show, is because a lot of people's first experience with drugs and alcohol happen in college. I have seen, and I can honestly say, countless people who go away to college, or maybe they don't even go that far, but they are away at college. They're not at home anymore. And they fall into the trap of, I have nobody to hold me accountable. I have no personal accountability because I'm too young and stupid to really comprehend what I'm doing and the consequences. And it seems like a relatively consequence free environment because you see your friends and maybe some of the older students participating in behaviors with impunity. And so it always sounds like a good idea to party and to drink in excess. And then when you're at the parties with the drinking, perhaps there's also drugs at these parties. And for those of you listening who are thinking, well, hold on there. There's parties and drinking and drugs happening in high school all the time. and I say, yes, I agree with you. There are definitely these things happening in high school as well. But the main difference being that in high school, most people are still going home to their parents' house after they're done with their nights out. Or at least they have to make it back to the house that they live in with their parents at some point. They're not just gone for days at a time. So, and your parents aren't stupid. And if your parents see you all hungover or strung out, they're probably going to say something or at least question you. And no teenager wants to be questioned by their parents about what they're doing and why they're doing it. So they might tone it down a little bit. But in college, when you've gone away to college and you're on your own and you are going home to a dorm room with potentially a roommate doing the same shit as you may not have that conscience kicking in to tell you that you're making bad decisions. So, what's to keep you from making really bad decisions around sex and drugs and alcohol when you're in an environment like that? Chaz?
Mm-hmm.
What is to prevent young people from diving headfirst into the deep end of that lifestyle when they've gone away to college?
I don't know.
Nothing, maybe, right?
Maybe not.
Aside from their own morals and values.
I mean, could come down to like maturity level.
Sure.
You know, falling back on where they came from.
And if where they came from was a potentially sheltered environment or a strict upbringing where partying and hanging out with the bad kids was never allowed, and a strict curfew, and you had to keep the door open when your boyfriend was over, that this freedom can be a recipe for just absolute craziness, just debauchery and the excitement of it and everything else, especially maybe in the beginning. Herein lies the problem. Drugs and alcohol, for some people, do not take particularly long to grab hold of you. And what can be a casual, this is fun on the weekends when I don't have class, can very quickly turn into every night after class or every evening in my dorm room, or especially when it comes to certain kinds of drugs, I'm using this drug to stay focused on my schoolwork. We tell ourselves this. And because of the availability of drugs and alcohol in big cities, where a fair amount of these universities are, is it a recipe for disaster? So everything that I've brought up so far is kind of the meat and potatoes of what I want to talk about this evening. Because I think that there may be people on both sides of this listening. Siblings, parents, loved ones of individuals who are going away to college or have gone away to college. And the reason I wanted to bring it up like I mentioned when we briefly chatted about it earlier, is because right now, the beginning of August, it is officially back to school season. And there are people on their way back to school right now, or on their way to school for the very first time. And there are scared shitless parents sending their children off to the abyss that don't really know, because maybe they're in their 40s or their 50s and it's been a long time since they went away to college, or maybe their kid is more fortunate than they were, and maybe their kid is going away to college and they never had the chance to do that. So maybe they don't have any concept of what it's like to be away at college and what that freedom can do. And so, without any interest in scaring anybody, there are telltale signs of somebody that's in the midst of making bad decisions. And there are also ways for people that may be going away to college. Maybe they're freshly sober. Maybe they had a really bad first couple of years of college, got into some shit, cleaned themselves up, took a semester or 2 semesters off, and they're going back to school, and they don't want to find themselves in the same predicament that they were in before. I think there's a lot of elements to this and a lot of possibilities. And so, again, without any interest in scaring anybody, I wanted to talk about the prevalence of the party lifestyle in college campuses, the warning signs of a potential problem, and what people can do to protect themselves or protect the people that they love, or even approach the people that they love if they find themselves slowly sliding towards destruction. So what do you say?
Sure.
Your excitement is boiling over, Chaz. You're boiling over with excitement. So when Robinson gets back, hopefully he'll be calling in a little while. I know that he is the parent of a child who is of age right now and potentially in or around this environment. And I want to get his perspective on whether or not there is an inherent fear there. And for you, Chaz, when you went away to college, was this something that you witnessed? Was this something that you saw people get involved with? Was this something that you had to make a conscious effort to stay away from? Did you watch people slowly descend into a very unfortunate lifestyle while you were in school? Was it as prevalent then as it seems to be now? Because we watched.
Prevalent.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
How prevalent was it?
It's just that people weren't like all talking about it like apparently they are now.
Do you think that could have something to do with the internet?
I think a lot of it does. I was in college before Facebook even got, into the general public and things like that. But as far as staying away from it, who's to say that I ever actually did stay away?
Well, and that's a whole nother conversation that I will never put anybody in a position where they have to talk about something that they don't want to talk about. But
it's not necessarily that either. It's just that I don't know. I got to know a lot of people in that scene, and now let's just say I have quite a bit of compassion and empathy for them, and I don't judge them, even if they make bad decisions.
What about at the
I don't
time?
like. I didn't either then.
No.
That's just not the kind of person I am. I don't. If someone makes a bad decision, I don't hold that against them at all. I just it
Well,
just makes me feel very uncomfortable to do that.
and I think that a lot of people feel that way, but I also think that a lot of people feel helpless. What what can I do if I am witnessing this happen to a friend of mine or even just an acquaintance? What can I do? And I think we can do more than we think we can. Because with a little bit of education and a little bit of compassion, like Chaz said, you could very honestly keep someone from destroying themselves and putting themselves in a situation that could take years or decades to dig themselves out of. And so, what I think is kind of a positive side to all of this is that we still look at those college years as the experimental phase in life. The the time when you come into your own and you get to figure out who you really are. You kind of do get to make bad decisions and the consequences aren't as severe. You also get to watch other people make bad decisions and experience severe consequences like DUI, rape, unplanned pregnancy, drug addiction, um, perhaps car accidents and people hurting themselves or getting hurt. And these are all things that in that period in your life seem to kind of be everywhere. Like, oh, holy crap. You know, Susie got pregnant. What's she going to do? She's only 20 years old. And then you find out that she got pregnant because she was hooking up with somebody twice her age who was buying her alcohol and all of these, kind of party elements, this consequence free environment myth that I think people in that age category kind of tell themselves, myself included. I have made my fair share of bad decisions. And what's funny is I used to be, when I was in that age, that beginning age of, out of high school, the first handful of years when most of my friends were in college, I didn't go to college. I waited a few years. And so when my friends went off to college, I was still hanging out with all of the straight edge kids. And I was still very much against the lifestyle of parties and drugs and drinking. And part of me wonders if the reason I stayed away from that shit and stayed away from it, very adamantly stayed away from it, was because maybe I subconsciously knew that I was predisposed to substance abuse. Do you think that's possible, Chaz? Do you think that people are predisposed to addiction?
I think so.
Do you?
I also think that people are predisposed to having different reactions to drugs than other people do. In
Some
other
people talk
words,
about addiction as being genetic.
hmm
How do you feel about that?
I think there's something to it. I think that it's a lot of it that I've seen studied and everything is that there's a lot having to do with not just genetics, but also personality. And I think that personality also is inherited. and passed on, as well as the different things like different ways of looking at things and different attitudes and social norms and such that come with the household and the family and the culture that you just are born into, really, that go towards or against addiction one way or another, especially like, for instance, alcoholism. In some people's families, it's, if you don't drink, it's kind of odd. Drinking is something that everyone does. And sure enough, you're usually going to get one or two of those people, are really going to come down with a severe drinking problem, while everyone else just keeps drinking without a problem. Or is that the problem? So really, I think it's a lot of things having to do with it, not just genetics. Going it is just genetic. It's like a third. No, not even that. It's like a fifth of the entire issue.
And so then, safe to say, a predisposition is potentially a very real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think it's so important that we get to a place where we can minimize or eradicate the taboo that comes along with addiction. Because if I know or I think that my offspring is predisposed to substance abuse, but I keep it a secret from them before they go off to college, where they will inevitably experiment with drugs and alcohol, am I setting them up for a problem?
I don't know. I've never had to do that.
Say that again?
I said, I don't know. I've never had to do that.
Well, right. But this is neither have I, Chaz. This is why we're having a conversation about it. We most of the shit we talk about, we're just discussing. And we're drawing conclusions based on the information that we have gathered. So the way I see it is, if we don't have the conversation and we keep it secret and we are ashamed of it, or we think that it will somehow change an opinion of me, or they'll think less of me, or they won't respect me or trust me, or you name it, and they're not aware of the possibility that this is something that could very well be part of their personality makeup or their genetic makeup, or however you want to look at it. But if we're running under the assumption that there is a possibility that there is a predisposition to substance abuse based on a number of these factors, then not like use something very dangerous but similarly hereditary, like hypertension. I knew growing up that my mother and her father before her suffered from high blood pressure. And both of these people are very active, very healthy, very fit individuals. My grandfather, until the day he died, was very fit and had a heart attack when he was really young and changed his lifestyle around his eating habits and ate very healthy and exercised, and heart disease was a problem with him. And then my mom at a young age also diagnosed with hypertension, taking blood pressure medication, but still like literally running 5-6 miles a day at age 54 and in really good shape. And here I am, and I consider myself in fairly good shape. I exercise regularly, and yet I also take blood pressure medication since I'm 24 years old every single day to keep my blood pressure under control. Now, if hypertension were some taboo thing that people didn't talk about, then maybe I would have never known that my mother and my grandfather suffered from hypertension. And maybe I would not have found out that I did too until something bad happened. Because hypertension isn't one of those things that's like from as a baby, your doctor says, "Oh, yep, you're going to have high blood pressure." No, it's like one day you go to the doctor and the doctor says, "Huh, your blood pressure's kind of high. What are you eating? How are you exercising?" And then you tell them, I eat pretty normal and I don't do anything out of the ordinary, and yeah, I exercise pretty regularly. Oh, okay. Well, let's keep an eye on it. We keep an eye on it, and it doesn't get better on its own. It's not just a fluke. They run some tests. They realize, yeah, you have high blood pressure, and we're going to have to put you on medication because no amount of lifestyle change is going to affect it very much. So here's your medication. With a drug addict or an alcoholic, that may not be a conversation that you're having. And if your parents maybe stopped drinking or stopped using drugs well before you ever had any concept of it, like me, then I'm faced with kind of a tough decision. Do I share my story with my children as they get older? Am I open and honest about it and talk to them, knowing that there is a possibility for a predisposition to substance abuse in them as well? Just like I will have the high blood pressure conversation with them? Or do we keep it secret? Are we too ashamed of it to talk about it with our kids before they go off to school? I personally don't know the answer to that question, and I certainly don't have the answer to that question for everybody. But it's definitely something to think about. If you're listening to this program and you are a recovering alcoholic or a recovering addict and you have children and you have a concern that your children could be genetically predisposed to substance abuse, then maybe it does make sense to swallow your pride and to have an open dialogue with your children about your recovery and the life decisions that you made that led you down a path that could have been very detrimental to their life. But then, on the flip side, the invincibility factor of young people. I'm not going to end up like my parents' thought process. Or I think about some of my friends growing up when I was in my early teens and I was hanging out with the bad kids and they were going to the 7-Eleven and stealing cigarettes, and we were smoking in the trees behind the fence behind the clubhouse. And I had a friend, I'll never forget this. I had a friend who wouldn't smoke the cigarettes with us. We were all, just being rebellious kids smoking cigarettes. And he wouldn't smoke. And you know what he told me? He told us he wasn't going to smoke the cigarettes because his mother told him when he was younger that he was allergic to cigarette smoke. Who the fuck is allergic to cigarette smoke? I really don't think that's a thing. I don't think you can be allergic to cigarette smoke. I really don't. Like, unless you have asthma. But the concept of being allergic to cigarette smoke, I think, is horseshit. And I knew a few people that said this growing up. Oh, I could never smoke because I'm allergic to cigarette smoke. How the fuck would you know that? You're 10. But their parents tell them this in hopes that it will convince them not to ever smoke cigarettes. And I get that concept. I get that some parents choose to parent their kids out of fear and you scare them. You know, oh, you never. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say that's not fear. That's just parent doesn't have the balls to tell the kid don't smoke.
Right.
They have to make up some kind of story. They have to make up some kind of, just totally irrational and fake scare tale in order to get the kid not to smoke. And they just can't tell them, you know what? It's not a good idea, and here's why. And then actually explain to them the real reasons why they shouldn't smoke. But
and I think
they don't do that.
Decades ago, moms used to have similar conversations with girls about sex, right? Or about being promiscuous in any way. I mean, back in like the 1950s, you had girls who thought that they could get pregnant from kissing. They didn't make that shit up in their own heads. This was shared with them. This was told to them by their mom saying, well, you shouldn't be kissing boys because you don't want to get pregnant. And so now you have a similar type thing going on with cigarettes or drinking or whatever. And you can never smoke, little Billy, because you're allergic to cigarettes and your throat could close and your lungs could collapse and you could die. And then little Billy turns 18 and his friends are laughing at him, telling him yeah, little Billy, you're right. Your mom's right. And you certainly wouldn't want the tooth fairy to find out that you were smoking. You friggin' moron. And then little Billy finds out that mom was lying to him this whole time and says, fuck it, I'm going to smoke. And then smokes if it takes his first drag of a cigarette and his lungs don't close and his heart doesn't stop and he doesn't start gasping and choking and dying and says, holy shit, I was lied to this whole time. What else were my parents lying to me about? I feel like that's a very dangerous way of parenting your children. And I think you're absolutely right, Chaz. That is a coward's way of parenting. That is for pussy parents who don't want to have tough conversations with their kids. I agree. You're a very wise man, Chaz. Robinson, are you there? I see him. I see his
Eating
picture.
a rabbit.
Eating bunny. All right, well, I know he's on, so hopefully he's muted, or maybe he's not muted. Yeah, he's muted. So maybe he'll unmute himself and join the conversation here in a moment. You are listening to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. I still don't think we're on Radio Valencia. But we're definitely on YouTube. And I mentioned last week that we have our own YouTube link now. We have our own YouTube URL. It's a long one, youtube.com/c/Sober Happy Hour radio podcast. All one word. Good luck with autocorrect. You can get straight to our YouTube channel, of which we have now multiple subscribers to our YouTube channel, Chaz. How cool is that? And Robinson disappeared. And when somebody leaves the hangout, they leave in a very dramatic way. They fall out of that bottom area. They just go like they get sucked into the seventh circle of YouTube hell. So we're trying to talk about, Chaz is trying to stay awake. We're trying to talk about the pitfalls, the consequence-free environment that exists in your late teens, early 20s when you leave the nest, you spread your wings and fly away, and you no longer have your parents breathing down your neck telling you what to do and what not to do, and some of the very real, very scary and destructive things that kids that age can find themselves getting into when they maybe don't fully comprehend what could happen. So we hear stories. And I'm going to bring up a controversial one right now, Chaz. Bill Cosby. All right? Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby right now, from 30.
He's not having a good time.
40 years ago, Bill Cosby allegedly, we have to say that, because in this country you are innocent before proven guilty. But allegedly, Bill Cosby used to like to hang out with impressionable women. And if this was 40 years ago, they're pretty young, because Bill Cosby's what, like in his late 60s now?
70s.
So still pretty young, like 20s, 30s, probably. He would allegedly give drugs to girls, quaaludes, ludes. He would give them drugs. He would essentially incapacitate them, and he would have sex with them. Now, I think there are varying opinions about rape in this world, and I'm not going to get into my thoughts on rape and whether there are different levels of rape: murder 1, murder 2, manslaughter, justifiable homicide, rape 1, rape 2. I don't know.
It's a good thing you're not going into that.
Well, right. But here's the thing. If somebody doesn't want to have sex with you and you have sex with them, what is that?
Rape.
Rape. If somebody can't make the decision as to whether or not they want to have sex with you and you have sex with them, what is that?
Rape.
Rape. So, to me, yes is yes, no is no, and I just want to go to sleep, and is no. That was my impression of a girl on Quaaludes. And yet, giving somebody drugs and getting them to the point where they're barely conscious, but they're not actively saying no, they're not explicitly saying no, is not the same as someone explicitly saying yes. Okay? So this is something that happens so often. So often. It is absolutely frightening how often this happens. That Bill Cosby is just kind of the poster child for what I refer to as drug rape at this point in history. And when we're talking about young people, college-aged individuals, impressionable people who potentially are experimenting with drugs and alcohol, maybe for the first time or for the first time in a more consequence-free environment in terms of getting in trouble with their parents or being found out, they could very well be putting themselves in a position unintentionally where they find themselves with a Bill Cosby in their pants. Not literally, because he's 70 years old now. But when we're making the decision at a younger age to start the process of experimentation with drugs and alcohol, I think education, knowledge, awareness is critical to the type of experience that you are going to have. Because if you think that that kind of shit isn't going to happen, male or female, new to drugs and alcohol, or veteran party goer from high school, this type of shit's still happening. It's happening every single day. So, Robinson, you're there. How are you, sir? He's doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
He makes street sounds with his mouth like none other. He does a wonderful impression of a Vietnam cityscape. All right. So either we can't hear him or he can't hear us. But he looks lovely. All right. Well, getting back to our conversation with I'll mute him here. Mute. Come on, let me mute him. Mute. There we go. Oh, he unmuted himself, I think. You son of a bitch. Robinson? Are you there? Huh.
Are you able to turn his feed down?
I'm trying to, and it doesn't seem to want to do anything. It's weird. He's making the creepiest face right now. It's scaring me. Weird. Well, normally when I adjust his volume, it makes a little ding-ding sound. I heard that. That was you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, maybe I'll eject him. Are you sure you want to eject Robinson from this video call? Yes. Good night. Ha ha ha. I'll invite him back. So, God damn it. Now I lost my train of thought.
Music break?
You want to take a music break? See if we can get Robinson back on the call?
Sure.
Let's do that. That sounds like a good idea. All right. Just in the last few minutes, we've had like 4 people subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's pretty exciting. So I'm going to see if I can feed Chaz some methamphetamines since he's a little bit sleepy. I'm not sure that him being in a dark room is the best idea for his sleepiness. I know it's late. But let's see if we can get Robinson on. See if he can join our conversation. We're going to take a short break from the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. Coming to you live from youtube.com. You're probably listening to this as a podcast. And the Radio Valencia stream is broken tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So if you are trying to listen via Radio Valencia or TuneIn Radio, we apologize profusely for the technical difficulties that we're having in that realm. Hopefully next week or the week after that, we will be back on Radio Valencia with a brand new live show for you. But for now, we're going to play a little song. I think we might have played this song once before, but I don't care. We're going to play it again because it's an old classic. I hope you enjoy it. This is the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast.
Leave me lying on the floor. Hope the world could save me, but it's over with. Only waking up once more, but I wish your love could save me, but I'm over it. Oh, how I wish your love would sing to me. Oh, how I wish your love would shine. Standing naked at your door, hope that you will find me, but I hit the road. Giving up but screaming out once more, but I wish the world would blame me, but I'm on my way. Oh, how I wish your love would sing to me. Oh, how I wish your love would shine. Give me your heart, my heart is breaking me down. No, too late, I miss you, world. Bye. I wish your love was more of what I need. And I wish your love could bring me back to sleep. I wish your love would save me from what I've become. out once more. No, 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 no. Oh, no. But you're keeping me lying on the floor. Lying down, 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 down. Keep it up but screaming out once more.
Welcome back to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. I am your host. We were hoping to have Robinson back on the show by now. I'm telling you, man. It's that fucking Viet Cong. That's what it is. But I am still here with my lovely, talented, good-looking, yet sleepy friend Chaz. Coming to you from his sullen, what looks like potentially a bordello this evening with the red lights
That's just the light on the red wall.
and the, well, I said a bordello because of the red lights and the abundance of pussy that
Yes.
continues to come in and out of the frame. One of these days, we're going to have to like actually introduce your cats to the YouTube viewers because they tend to like to play around in the background.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, they get a little starved for attention, so they'll come and like stick their tail in your face.
Cleo was actually hanging on to this chair, like just literally hanging in the air earlier. I was just sitting there watching her dangle. I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
My cat Ravi is
He climbs up your leg.
He climbs you, and then he will just take his head and rub it all over you. Like, pet me, pet me, pet me, pet me, pet me. And he's just the funniest cat. He's
awesome.
Ridiculous. So we were having a conversation. We're trying to have a conversation about some of the lesser discussed issues, if you will, concerns with the simple act of growing up in this world. And I don't know. I look at it as the experimentation phase of your life when you are that age, when you are in college, the first 4 years of college. So from 18 to 22 years old, I think are pivotal. They're very important development years of your life. Decisions get made. And that's why I find some of these education programs, the abstinence programs, DARE. Abstinence.
They've all failed.
Well, yeah, and like the sex education abstinence programs that you see in the Midwest or in the South or in some of these red states where all they want to discuss with these high school kids is abstinence, abstinence, abstinence only. And I just don't think that it gives these young people enough information to make informed decisions. And when you're not given information to allow for informed decisions, then they're going to try to figure this shit out on their own. And that's why, like last week, we discussed a handful of different drugs and what it's like, according to those who have done it, what it's like to get off of these drugs. Because maybe somebody just needs a little education. They need to know what it's going to be like for most people to stop using these drugs. And we had a request from a viewer to kind of do the opposite episode, where we actually get into discussing what it's like to do certain drugs. And I thought that was a very interesting request. We also got some feedback from a listener about last week's episode that they wish that we would have had drug addicts in each of the categories that we discussed. That apparently the 5 that we discussed, only having experience to speak of in 2 of those categories was maybe not enough. We should have had a recovering meth addict, a recovering crack addict, a recovering, ecstasy abuser on the show. And I think that's a very valid point. I would love to have those people on the show. So come on the show. Come on. If you know anybody, if you, the person that wrote the comment, you specifically called out meth, maybe you're a recovering meth addict. Maybe you want to come on the show. We can obscure your face. We can put sunglasses on you and give you a wig and put you behind a dark screen, and we could modulate your voice. Whatever you like. But we'll do whatever you want. Just come on the show so we can ask you questions. You could talk about your experience getting off of meth. But both you and I, and Robinson, wherever he is in Vietnam, have experience being 20 years old and being around this type of environment. And there's so much pressure on young people in this age range. There's so much pressure to fit in, be cool, do what everybody else is doing. Drugs, alcohol, sex, bad decisions, cheating, pressure to get good grades, pressure to get into a good school, to get into a good master's program, to get a good job, to have a cool boyfriend or girlfriend. And with that pressure, I think is where some of the morals and some of the values can sometimes go by the wayside. And if you are in a fraternity or a sorority and there is an emphasis being put on drinking or being a female and having to be skinny, or being a female and having to be sexually open and potentially promiscuous, what can people do to protect themselves? What can young people do to not fall victim to some of this bad behavior, or to make decisions that they're not going to regret later, and to just simply be aware? Because it may seem inevitable that people of that age range are they're always going to experiment with drugs, with drinking, with sex. That's not going to stop, and I don't think that it should stop. But I think where we fall into the category of things that frightens me a little bit is the excess. I think we've become more and more excessive as time has gone on, and the availability of some of these drugs and some of this behavior. Like when we had the conversation a couple of months ago about, sex addicts or pornography addicts. And is this just the result of accessibility being far more than what it was years ago. We also talk about the purity of some of these drugs, especially drugs like marijuana. 30, 40 years ago, marijuana, typically, you weren't getting good marijuana. This was crap weed, stepped all over, full of seeds and stems from Mexico that you were smoking out of a rolling paper joint, and you were lucky to even get stoned. Now there's these custom made hydroponic, wonderful, ultra THC laden marijuana strains that you can get medical grade marijuana and smoke it out of a vaporizer or eat it in a brownie, and it is way more potent than it used to be. And the same goes for drugs. You used to maybe get Vicodins when I was younger, to now you have access to Oxy and morphine pills, and straight up heroin has made a huge comeback on college campuses. And it's dirt cheap compared to the pharmaceuticals. And with the rise of Facebook and Craigslist, just the internet in general, and the anonymity of encrypted messaging services, or even just the seeming anonymity and security of sending naughty pictures of yourself to someone, thinking no one else is ever going to gain access to this because I trust this person. I trust this person has my best interest at heart. So if they're telling me that taking this drug is no big deal or is safe, I trust this person. Or if they're telling me that if they send me a naked picture of myself, that of course they would never share it with anybody. Well, I would imagine that most of those celebrities last year who had all of their photos stolen and leaked all over the internet thought the same thing. They had this false sense of security. And even alcohol, Chaz, has become more potent, where moonshine is now a trendy drink, or something like Four Loko. It's like some fuck up energy drink mixed with malt liquor that's like 18% alcohol by volume. And so you find yourself in college, away from parents, away from getting caught or getting in trouble, and you find yourself being pressured. And all of a sudden, somebody who maybe wouldn't have made this decision 18 months ago is in a situation where this is the decision that they're making. And once they've made the decision, you can't really take it back. And then we get back into the conversation about somebody who's predisposed to being a drug addict or an alcoholic. And you're not cool if you're not drinking. Or you can't be accepted into this social group if you're not drinking, or you're not going to be able to study for your exam if you're not buying Adderall from your friends. And I've seen it go from something casual and seemingly benign to really quickly something destructive and awful.
If you can't do your studying because you have to have Adderall to do it, you have another issue other than drugs that you're going to need to address there. I mean, because that's just self-medicating for ADD.
Or do they just like the way they feel when they're taking Adderall?
Well, you said to study for an exam.
Right, and that's what their friend tells them. Hey, so you have a big test coming up and you haven't studied enough, and we've been out partying every night this week, but don't worry about it, because if I give you some Adderall and you cram for this exam tomorrow, you'll be fine. Really?
Well, then your friend's just an idiot.
Right.
It's like both people in that instance are just idiots.
And I think we are surrounded by idiots. A lot more idiots exist than we think. Because the consequences of your behavior may not be entirely obvious right away. And that's part of life, right? We make decisions, and sometimes those decisions seem harmless, and they may continue to seem or continue to be harmless for a while until they're not harmless anymore. So for the last bit of this conversation, I guess the question that I'd like to at least try and answer via opinion and our thoughts about it is, how do people protect themselves? And how do we protect the people that we care about so that they don't find themselves in a bad situation or kicked out of school or with a drug or drinking problem, or knocked up and pregnant their sophomore year of college unintentionally? How do you solve that problem? Is it a problem?
One of the ways that, I mean, it may seem counterintuitive to some of the things that you might have brought up, but from my experience and from what I've seen, if at least for young women, I would suggest finding a sorority. There's strength in numbers. Yes. Actually, if for a young woman going off to college, away from parents, out of town for the first time, sororities offer not just, I mean, it's, of course, there's, different houses have different, cultures, lifestyles, and values. But in general, there's this, I mean, there's a structure, and there's a, in other words, there's big sisters, little sisters, and all these other things that they watch out for each other. And my own sisters, I don't know if it was her house, but there was one instance in which a member of the sorority allowed another member to basically be Bill Cosby'd.
Wow.
She, in other words, she totally abandoned her sister, and she subsequently, was drugged and raped. The sister that
So you said she
her.
allowed her sister to be Bill Cosby'd, like a verb?
In other words, yes, I created
I
a new
love
verb.
Bill Cosby as a verb.
Yes.
Get off me, man. Stop Bill Cosbying me.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Anyway, so the one that left her there in that situation where that happened, she was expelled from the sorority. She was kicked out because you just
Good.
don't do that. And the whole like idea, the premise behind it is that even if you hate your sister's guts, it's like you don't have to like each other. You don't have to love each other. But if your sister needs you at like 3 a.m. and there's no one else, you have to go. It's that's like the unspoken, rule of it is that you have to, even if you don't like them, because they do the same for you. And so for a young girl going away from, being away from home for the first time, having strength in numbers and that kind of structure can be a very insulating and protective factor. So yeah.
So for all of any potential negatives that exist with these fraternity and sorority groups, what you're saying is that for all of the cons, for the partying lifestyle, for the cattiness, for the all the shit that exists inside of those sororities and fraternities that may be a little less than desirable to somebody like me, or may even border on distasteful or goofy.
Mm-hmm.
The benefit of safety in numbers, having other people to look out for you, and potentially other people to mentor you and share their own experiences with you, and just that protector, that wow, you had too much to drink, but I'm okay, and I'm going to make sure nothing bad happens to you. That there is a significant value to that. That's what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, despite all those other things, I mean, it's not like people just, are paying for friendship or anything. It is a real, it's almost like the mafia in a sense. They take care of each other, they protect their own, and it's something you truly do literally buy into, and so you're dedicated to it. But again, they stick with the house and the sorority, and eventually they grow up and they become the big sisters and they watch out for the littles that come in. And so it's just a continual cycle like that. And yeah, so but it's especially for people who are going away, young women who are leaving home and do not have that kind of, protective environment. Because even if they have, really good friends, you know, having a like definitive, literally structured social group really does provide that extra layer of protection that would otherwise they wouldn't have.
Wow. I can honestly say I really never thought of it that way.
That's how it happens. I can't say the same much for frats, but at least for sororities, that's how it happens.
And maybe that's my own ignorance, is sort of lumping the two into the same category, because you hear about some of the most awful shit that happens in college can happen with fraternities and with fraternity brothers doing terrible things to people. And with a sorority, though, that makes so much sense, because I mean, for the same reason that women go out together and women go to the restroom together when they're out together. I mean, there is safety in numbers, right? And there are sleaze bags out there, and there are people that will put shit in your drink and offer drugs that are more than what you're expecting. Hey, I have some pot, man. It's just pot, no big deal. They don't tell you that it's laced with ecstasy, or ketamine.
And again, like sororities, they have reputations. So there are ones where it's like, yeah, they're not going to watch out for each other. They're not going to do it. But there are other ones where it's like, there's definitely a code of honor in there. So it's really about finding the right one for you. And typically, I mean, they'll recognize it right back, that you belong there. So yeah, it's pretty daunting. I wouldn't want to have to face that kind of thing, like Rush Week. Oh my God, watching that. But yeah, when you find it, and it can be really, relationships that last after college and everything too. So I don't know. It is something people don't think about very much.
Yeah.
They really do lump it all in together with Greek life, but sorority life is definitely something worth looking into as far as what can a person do to protect themselves from all this shit that goes on during college. That is one way of doing it.
And especially, I would think, for maybe the more sheltered girl.
Yes,
from the small
very much
town
so.
that didn't have a lot of exposure. Maybe not as much for the girl that grew up, in downtown Los Angeles, who's had experience with this kind of stuff and has grown a thick skin.
A little more street smart.
Right. And those street smarts, you can't really teach that. You either experience it or you don't. And that's why, like, to me, I get frustrated with my older son sometimes because I grew up in a very different environment than he has. And I get frustrated because I don't understand why he'll make the decision that he makes, or he'll think the way that he thinks, or he won't understand something. And then I have to stop sometimes and think, well, hold on. He didn't grow up the same way that I did. He didn't grow up poor and with an abusive parent. These are things that I experienced, and I can't just project that experience upon somebody else. And that's why having the experience of what you're calling like a big sister, I think, could be incredibly beneficial to somebody and help prevent them making bad decisions that could negatively impact the rest of their life.
Or just, protecting them from when they do make bad decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's not always going to be totally preventable, but it can, the harm that can come from it can at least be minimized by having someone there to watch out for you.
So just today, somebody that I work with who lives on campus here in Arizona told me a story about, because I believe he lives in the dorms, and because he's foreign, for whatever reason, it's more affordable to live in student housing with a part-time job, I guess, like working for the dorm as like an RA, and then as like a part of the welcoming committee, or somebody that helps the new tenants, residents, that help them move in. He like helps them with orientation, or helps when people leave the dorm, making sure that the dorm is cleaned up and looks the way that it should before they leave. But so he's pretty heavily involved in dorm life in his dorm. And he told me a story today about how somebody, because he's an RA, so he has a solo room. He doesn't have to share it with anybody else. But somebody got into his room, and he didn't say what kind of drugs, but somebody got into his room and left drugs on his desk. He came to his room, and to his amazement, there were drugs on his desk. I don't know if it was pot. I don't know if it was pills. I don't know what it was, but he said, there were drugs on my desk. So the first thing he thought to do was call campus police and say, there are drugs in my room. I don't know how they got there. And
Bad idea.
right. Unfortunately for him, campus police show up and say, hey, there's drugs in your room. We're going to arrest you because you are in possession of illegal drugs. And he's trying to plead his case, and he's trying to plead.
He actually called campus police?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
they threatened to arrest him. They realized that he's not from this country. He didn't understand that when the cop tried to explain to him that possession is 9/10 of the law, he didn't know what that meant. And the cop was trying to use it in a very, cynical way. Like, so this is in your room. This is nobody else's room. You should technically be the only one with a key to your room. There are drugs in your room. I am a cop. You have invited me into your room to find the drugs in your room. Help me out here. So he didn't end up getting arrested, but the cop was apparently an absolute douchebag to him about the whole situation. And probably with his foreign accent and his genuine ignorance, he was able to convince this cop, why would I call you if these were my drugs? I called you because you're supposed to be the police officer who could come and file a report and take these away so that I didn't get in trouble for them. And the cop ended up believing him, but apparently really gave him the third degree for a while, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Was this like an attack of conscience situation, or, where he just wanted to get rid of the drugs and not get blamed for them and whatever.
There are plenty of other ways to get rid of drugs.
Right, it's called a toilet. That'd be my number one way of getting rid of drugs. It's called a toilet. And you flush them down the toilet and you pretend that you never saw them. And if anything, you file a report with campus security that you think someone may have broken into your room. Right? You don't say why you think. You just say, I think somebody broke into my room. They file a report. Now it's on file. Somebody may have broken into your room, so that if in the future you get busted for there being drugs in your room, you say, yeah, I told you. Somebody's been breaking into my room. I'm an RA. I am a well-hated person in this building because I am an RA, and I don't party, and I don't drink, and I don't do drugs, and maybe people resent that. And now there are drugs in my room. I didn't touch anything. My fingerprints are not on these drugs. I've already filed a report that my room is getting broken into, and then you don't get in trouble. Lesson learned. But the crazy part is that what went into my mind was drugs aren't cheap. Somebody had these drugs and put them in his room, I assume, to get him in trouble for them. So I would imagine that there's like a zero tolerance policy in most student housing buildings, that if you get caught with drugs, you're done. And if you're underage, say that again.
I said typically, yeah.
And if you're underage and you get caught with booze, what is the punishment in college if you get caught drinking and you're not 21? Is there punishment?
I believe there is, yeah.
Turn a blind eye? Because at SFSU, San Francisco State University, there was a bar on campus. Now, granted, they would check your ID before you were allowed into the bar, and you had to be 21 because it was a college campus. There were plenty of people there that were of age, but there was a bar on campus. To me, that sends the wrong signal to students. To have a student bar You live in San Francisco, there are plenty of bars for you to go to that don't have to be on campus.
Well, if you think of it like this, if it was on campus, that means you don't have to be driving. And if you're living on campus, then I mean, there's some good things about that.
See, and that's why you host this show with me, Chaz, because you are much smarter than I am.
That's just the other side of looking at it.
But you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. To have a bar on campus means nobody's driving drunk. And you can stumble back to your room without potentially putting anyone else in harm's way. That is brilliant. Brilliant. And because if there's a bar on campus, rather than everybody gets their booze and brings it back to campus and they bought it at the liquor store, then you kind of have a little bit more control over who's drinking.
And there's no reason it should be brought back.
Right. Because you're checking IDs at the door. So only the people who are of age can drink. And
like at ASU, there's plenty of bars just directly across the street from campus.
right.
So I mean, it's the exact same thing.
But on campus, I guess it's the part that just seemed weird to me. Like on campus. This is a campus run bar.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, right?
I think it's cool. Yeah.
And people loved it. So part of this whole conversation, a lot of young people early in their college careers drinking, right? Using, but we'll stick with drinking for now. They get busted. They get busted for underage drinking. They get kicked out of college. Or they get a DUI. Even worse.
I don't think you don't get kicked out of college. You get kicked out of the dorm.
Okay.
I don't think they don't disenroll your ass for getting for underage drinking.
Maybe some colleges do, like BYU.
That's because it's BYU.
Huh.
But typically, it's the dorm that you'd be kicked out of, if anything.
Well, so here's a question. Legal drinking age. 21? 25? Or 18? What makes more sense?
Well, depending on what you want to make sense on, like if you're going from a totally, I guess you could say, neurological point of view, I'd say 25, because by then the brain is no longer, your brain is basically fully developed by then, and introducing more alcohol or other chemicals into it isn't really going to adversely affect it as much, especially as if it was at 18 or 21. So to me, 25 for that reason makes the most sense. But yeah, I don't know.
So I like that point. I agree with that point. I look at 21. You're still pretty immature at 21. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
Would making the decision to drink at 18 really be that much different than being able to make the decision to drink at 21? I don't know.
No, absolutely not. No,
Right.
There really is no difference between 18 and 21.
So they give you the right to vote. They give you the right to go to war and shoot people or die yourself. They give you the right to buy cigarettes.
They give you the right to a 4,000-pound gasoline bomb that you aim at people for, like, going 200 miles an hour down the freeway.
They give you the right to have a child. Technically, you're an adult, right? You can move out. You can vote. You can go to war. You can
get a gun.
Get a gun in some states.
You can drive.
Yep.
All
Can't rent a car. That's
not
weird.
until you're 25.
Yeah.
That's 25, yeah.
So, would it make sense to change the legal drinking age to 18 simply to lessen the possible permanent negative impact on your legal record, your permanent record, if you get caught drinking in college with the people who are old enough to drink, but because you're 19, you're not old enough to drink, and now you get arrested for underage drinking, and a whole bunch of bad shit can happen in your life. Lose your scholarship to school. Parents pull you out of school. You get arrested, so now it is on your permanent record, making it now more difficult for you to get a job or an internship somewhere. Or would that just be completely irresponsible to make it 18?
I don't think it makes any sense. Like, to decrease it for that reason isn't a good enough reason.
Okay.
Because basically that's just saying, okay, you're going to fuck up anyway, so we may as well just decrease it. No, it's like...
well, is that not kind of the argument for legalizing pot? People are going to do it anyway, so you might as well just make it less of a punishment, make it legal.
Kind of, I guess.
I don't know.
But I think that lowering it to 18 would actually do far more harm.
How?
Well, probably more drinking.
Okay. Starting
drinking earlier. If you think about it, like, okay, so if it's at 21, that means that when you're about 18 or so, you've probably got 21-year-old friends, or other people who can access it for you. If it's 18, well, think about who else it hangs out with 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds. So guess what? It starts going down. And so you eventually get easier access and earlier access to it than you would if it was still at 21.
Well, and then
even when you're 16, you're like, geez, let's find someone to buy us some booze or something. But no, if you're 16 and your friend's 18, then it's easy enough.
And I think I just may have thought of the topic for another show. Parents. Mm-hmm. Parents who think that they are protecting their children by buying them alcohol and saying, I will buy you this alcohol, but you have to drink it at my house where I can keep you under my roof, keep an eye on you, and keep you safe.
Parents as enablers.
Yeah, parents as enablers. Because that conversation can even stretch into the parents who buy hardcore drugs for their drug addict children because they think it's safer, or because they don't want to see them, sell themselves on the street to get their drugs, so they'll buy them the drugs and they feel so bad for them, or they think it was their fault because I divorced his father when he was 13 and it's my fault. Parents as enablers. I think that's a great topic. So, now that we've come up with the topic for an upcoming show, you've been listening to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. I'm not sure if we ever ended up on Radio Valencia, but at this point, the show's over, so it doesn't really matter. Robinson never joined us.
He did. We saw his face and heard
we
the
did
street
see his
sounds
frozen
of
face.
Vietnam.
We heard the streets of Vietnam. But Chaz, I just wanted to say, I know that you were tired and you were considering taking the night off, and I'm glad that you didn't, because I learned a lot from you, like I always do. You always have wonderful insights, and I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's late, and I hope you get some sleep. So for Chaz, I am your host. Thank you for listening to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. You can email us soberhappyhour@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, and we will be back probably not next week because I will be out of town and so will Robinson, and we may have no way to broadcast the show. But until next time, if you or yours is considering getting sober, I highly recommend it. Good night, Chaz.
Good night.